Ha ha! Welcome to another episode on the Choose Yourself channel. Now, most people don't decide to sacrifice their health. What you doing? They just slowly donate it like spare change, and there's a bunch of people that could use that. A little energy here, a skip meal there, sleep gets borrowed, workouts get postponed, and suddenly your body is running like a screenager with their phone at 2% looking for a charger. You're going to software update your phone, but you won't software update your body? That's why you need sleep. Sleep is the lead domino, but most people rather skip sleep and eat dominoes. What are you doing? You call it being a good parent, a great teacher, a reliable caregiver, employee of the month, chasing money. Meanwhile, your nervous system is filing an HR complaint about lack of appreciation and your metabolism is on a streak of sick days with no more PTO. See? Now your cup is empty. Half glass, you're going to half-ass your life. Today's self-chooser lived that life. Grief hit, burnout followed. She was parenting, teaching, caregiving, snoozing her purpose, losing her health, until the moment she got tired of her own BS. We call that the trigger point. Pillar one of the TEFIC. When she realized you cannot lead, love, or lift anyone else up when you're running on fumes. Now, she's an energy leader, nutritionist, coach, and day one member of the Choose Yourself community. The CYC, strongest dolphins in the sea, and still found the juice to launch CYC Kids, our newest branch through the Choose Yourself community. Providing that when you fix the foundation, the whole house can embrace the overflow lifestyle. Welcome to the show, Miss Energy Ashley. How you feeling?
I am feeling amazing. As we like to say, I am glowing and growing today, every day.
I can see it from the inside out. It starts with your gut for sure. And, I appreciate your support. Me and Ashley, we met online and we just aligned and connected because of divine timing and just what it is. When you filter your senses, your algorithm just puts people in your path that will help you be who you're supposed to be. But the CYC wasn't the catapult to her evolution. She started choosing herself on her own in the first place, similar to me. So let's let you tell the people a little bit about your story, how'd you grow up, and then we can go through the choose yourself process. What was the trigger point?
So great. The trigger point for me was 2021 is when I started like really focusing on it. The end of 2020 was my trigger point. So, COVID hit in 2020. I was home, I was remote teaching, and most of the time, what else were we doing? Because we saw what everyone else was doing, snacking. I was putting the food back. I was relaxing. I wasn't moving because I had already been in a place of self-care was not a, an intentionality for me, right? So I'm home. I'm even more lazy because I'm not going to work. I'm not moving around in the classroom. I'm sitting behind a computer. And what I ended up seeing was, holy moly, I gained like 30 pounds in 6 months. Now, I was already overweight, but that 30 pounds pushed me over the edge. I had already been dealing with things like chronic inflammation. I would wake up daily in chronic pain. When I tell you I'd get out of bed, put my foot down, and I'd already be in a mindset of this is going to be a terrible day. Because even just that little bit of having to get up, I was, as you said in the intro, barely surviving, if that's even the word you could say. So my trigger point was I had at the end of 2020 a pinched nerve that was so bad I was crawling on my floor. Couldn't even make it to my bathroom, which is probably 20 feet away from my room. And I had it. I had already been warned before that a couple years that I was probably at risk for having an early heart attack the way I was going as it was, because again, self-care was not in my realm. I was a mom of two kids by that point, thinking, I can't take care of myself. Like, how dare I? Because I wasn't already in that mindset before having them. Having them just solidified the idea that you don't have time for yourself. So my time management sucked. My complaining was a daily occurrence. At the time, I worked with an amazing woman who used to just tell me, Ashley, wake up and just exercise a little. It's okay. And even with her telling me, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it until I got to that trigger point. And I said, enough is enough. You are not crawling on the floor. You have this time now to finally balance being home. And now you're working from home. You have the time, Ashley. Like, wake up or something bad is really going to happen. And so I made the decision by December 2020. That's it. At the time, I had decided to try a 21-day challenge with a company called Herbalife that I had used years ago. And you know what? Guess what? That served a purpose. I ultimately later down the line kind of realized it wasn't necessarily fully aligned with my holistic growth and just my holistic beliefs that I had further on as I used the products and just grew, in my own journey. So I decided ultimately to start going more into what was more nutritional. Was it, I wasn't a coach because I was selling someone products. I was telling people how they could lose weight. I was telling someone, hey, do this and you can get these results. But I ultimately realized that wasn't coaching anyone and that wasn't changing who I was nutritionally or as a human. And so I decided to start delving into personal development. Um, After the personal development, which was small, little, minute things. One of my favorite aunts, Aunt Jackie, she was kind of always the person in my corner from when I was young after my father passed at 10, who would, look out for us, make sure we were good. Not that all the other family didn't, but she was the one that we remained the closest with at that young age, right after he passed. And something stuck out to me that she always used to tell me, Ashley, you need a plan whatever's going on in life. Anytime I called her, because she lived in Virginia, we were up here in New York, her first question would be, okay, what's the plan? And she is the reason I started energy leadership coaching.
Shout out Aunt Jackie, man. Shout out to Aunt
Yep.
Jackie. Everybody hopefully has that person, even though you might not listen to them.
Yeah. Well, I was smart enough to listen to her. She's a fellow Libra, so I knew,
Libra gang.
she had something going on there. Exactly. And so she started the program for energy leadership coaching, and she just at the time was like, Ashley, I see you're starting to make these changes. And she just, I guess, knew intuitively I was ready for it. And she invited me to a session that was kind of like to see what the program would offer. And in that 1 hour session, I was like, boom, ready. Like it was just the next step. And it just felt aligned. It felt purposeful in that trigger point, making that choice to say, that's it. Like something has to change. I didn't quite know exactly what was going to change, but I started with the weight loss, and little by little, it then translated into doing the energy leadership coaching program, which led me to then, start to build an awareness on shifting my own energy. How was I showing up? How did I need to create an awareness? Because in learning how to lead people in that way and in creating clients' awareness around it, I had to tap into my own. And that was some dark things came up in that, but I remained consistent with it. It took me over a year to go through that program. That program then led me into getting more curious about my own nutrition and realizing again, starting with the Herbalife and other things I had done from 16, 20 years old, other times in my life where I tried to lose weight, Weight Watchers, I'd buy into people's programming. And what I kind of realized was like, this isn't a one size fits all thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are certain nutritional values we should all, adhere, we should all know about, but we don't all need the same thing. And what I needed in that moment was clean food. I needed gut repair. I needed to focus on certain things because every time I went to a doctor, it was, oh, you have acid reflux. Oh, you have chronic sinusitis. Oh, you have the chronic inflammation. That's fine. Let's just take aspirin. It was meds. Exactly. It was meds. And I grew up with a mom who was very holistic, and to this day, I have some of her nutrition books up on my shelf now that I've taken from her. But, home remedies, she believed in all natural. She grew up in Istanbul, Turkey, so we were raised to eat a very Mediterranean diet with, some other things thrown in there. But guess what? When I was 16, 17 years old and I finally made my own money, where did I go to? McDonald's.
Same.
And I started that pattern early of like, you rebel against what you don't know. And when I think about that now, I'm 40 years old looking back going, man, she set me up real good and I'm the one who screwed it up. And I screwed it up because of conformity, not choice.
Mm-hmm.
I screwed it up because I wanted to fit in. It was the easy thing to do to go across the street and get McDonald's when I was working 13, 14 hours. When I worked in a restaurant that I could have ate a much healthier, food, but I still chose to do the thing that, again, was easy, the thing that everyone else was doing. Oh, okay, you're going out for lunch and you're going to McDonald's, I'll go with you.
Mm-hmm.
And, little by little, those choices from then till now really, led me to a place again where I realized like we've been putting so much crap into our bodies because we've been programmed to think that that's what's normal. It's normal to go to the corner deli before school and get a toasted butter bagel and a juice and a coffee and a hot chocolate,
For
and what are we
breakfast.
doing?
That's just breakfast.
Exactly. And what am I getting from that? Carbs, butter. Okay, maybe that's a healthy fat, cool. but I get no protein. I have nothing fueling my body for the day. I'm going to be hungry again. That's all going to turn into sugar. Was like, holy smokes.
Cycle.
And so the more I reined that in, I sought and coach myself, and he ended up leading me towards, fasting, which I had tried before. And again, there was just something about the intentionality of that first choice from where that trigger point was that just led me towards more and more and more. And by the time I got to CYC, you guys were like the nail in the coffin. Like, all right, this is what you were supposed to do. This is Community's always been at the center of who I was. I grew up with a father who would, when you went out with him, no matter where we were going in our neighborhood, he knew someone. He shook all the business hands. He spoke to all the people in the delis, any place we went in our neighborhood. He knew these people by first name and they knew him. And that was a lesson I learned early, to see the power in that community, and in my family that I grew up in, it was a huge power of community. We had a lot of chosen family. Neither one of my parents were from New York. So I had always seen it. I had always kind of felt it. I always felt comfortable in groups. I was always the floater, like in high school. People would tell me I could get along with anyone. As you know, I can talk, I can go, I love it. Like, it feeds my soul. And the more I've learned to feed my soul, the more I want to, the more I look for it, the more opportunities I seek, the more I see, like I've said before, the more I give to the community, the more I get back.
Mm-hmm. Same. That's how it is.
Yeah.
It's your belief system. And if there's a red car theory that is old as time, where if I ask you how many red cars you've seen today, you'd say none. But if I said I give you $1,000 if you tell me how many you see tomorrow, you probably start counting the purple ones and the maroon ones as red because you don't want to miss one. And so it's about,
Exactly.
what belief system, what you believe in. So you went through the TEFIC literally to a T, from the trigger point to the environment, what you're consuming, and then you set the foundation with your routines. Then you started investing into coaching and other programs, and then now you started to contribute, from teaching and parenting. But you were already teaching and parenting. So what was that impact like? The difference when pre-COVID, when you were a parent, versus post-COVID, and how that shift your impact on your kids and the people around you?
Absolutely. I think both have changed dramatically in such a way that's like freeing. I would say that, again, I was barely surviving. So my time management skills really sucked at that point. I'd be running around from dropping kids off, going to work, getting them, doing this, doing that. And again, because I lacked the foundations, that always just felt super stressful. And so I wasn't fully at my best, and I've always been someone who, again, has valued fun, who's been kind of easygoing. And even through the stress, you could feel that, like, I wasn't fully in balance with myself. So I would be going, going, going. And I had a 3.5-year-old and a newborn. And then it was, all the stages. And just between all those things, I was in a brain fog often. I was tired. I was sluggish. I wouldn't want to run around with them at the park because I'd physically not want to. I'd be uncomfortable, just doing things with them. Listen, there was times I'd try to go on rides with them and I didn't fit in the seat, or I didn't feel comfortable in that thing because I'd be like, oh no, there was a couple times I needed a double harness when I tried to go zip lining once. And I was like, oh, this is the most embarrassing thing.
Dang.
So, yeah, listen, and
Yeah.
now I'm like, listen, me and my 9-year-old can share some items now. Now I'm like, my
Right.
waist is good. We're good. I only need one. We don't need
Like,
no devils, but
that's it. Need to hear that once, and I'm not going back to that.
literally, like, I never wanted to go back to that. But my kids got, yes, they got a physical shell. They got someone, yes, who would show up for them. And yes, I took them where they needed to go. I made it all happen, but I wasn't there in a sense of my soul. I wasn't there having fun with them. Now, before school, forget it. I'm singing, I'm dancing, I'm messing with them. We're having a good time because I realized, like, that mental stress is no longer there from having that foundation, from having these systems. Teaching similarly, post COVID was hard enough. Right in the midst of COVID, I was very thankful that I had all the different jobs I had, from being front of the house at restaurants from along, from 18 till 28, having that experience of lots of energy, talking, multitasking, moving, just having to make a lot of split decisions, all these things, office managers, I worked in marketing, all that stuff prepared me to teach online because I was one of the few teachers who was like, let's roll with this. Like, what am I got no choice in this. I'm not going to sit and complain every day that it sucks. I'm going to figure out how I can use certain platforms I've never used before. I'm going to dive in, right? But it was still a moment in time where it was like, whoa. And doing that while I was also simultaneously going to school and self-teaching myself, the energy leadership coaching, doing the program was intensive. Like they required you to be on Zooms every week. We had to do mentor coaching, peer coaching. I was doing, my own assignments, my own writing, my reading, all that stuff while I was teaching online. And I mean, it was like,
And parenting.
how are you handling this? And parenting. And, still simultaneously trying to do this challenge of losing weight and little by little exercising and and when I was, like I said, chronic in pain, chronic inflammation, just stepping off the bed was hard for me to wrap my head around working out.
Right.
It was that mindset of like, this is going to suck. This is going to hurt. I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm going to be embarrassed, even in my own home where no one sees me, but again, like that momentum that I got from that teaching went from stressful and like, OMG, what's going on? And then when we came back from COVID, the kids were just different. The kids' processing was different. The kids' needs were different. It was a lot more, and I would still feel the stress. Now, because I have my foundations, I now come into my classroom and I offer my students those foundations. We start our day with music. We start our day with some sort of positivity. I've now got them journaling every day, their positive affirmations, because we're going to fake it
Nice.
till we make it.
Yeah.
And we're
Shoot,
going to believe in
manifest, yo.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Listen, and I've seen the power of bringing my own self-work into my classroom. It's changing my classroom environment. It's changing the way I look at my students. It was also part of why I went back and just did another degree last year in community leadership in urban schools, because I believe that my leadership isn't just going to come from what I do in my classroom, but that leadership opportunity is larger than that. I now do, like you said, our CYC Kids, and I've got all this stuff that I want to plan into youth programming, but also the adults, because who's leading these children? Yes, I am in their classroom, but when they go home, they have these families that they're spending the other half of their time with. And so my want to educate in a certain way, I've always, 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 since I've been an educator, educated with my heart. But in doing the work, in changing who I was, and not really changing, but embracing my true self, and in breaking out from that conformity and really choosing, I have chose to lead my classroom in a way that, some people may not understand, but it works for me. And the kids see the genuine love, and I see the impact. I see the reward of that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't make these choices. If I didn't better myself, I wouldn't be a better teacher for them. And
You,
also, I see the leadership in like, they're like, Miss, are you fasting? They ask me every week now, are you fasting now? Because they've become curious about the things I do. They see me munch on fruits and vegetables and they want to go, can I eat that? Can I try that? And I'm like,
hmm
let me ask your parent before you have an allergic reaction.
Kids allergic to all kinds of stuff nowadays. How you allergic to fruit? Dang it, that's not supposed to be
There was
happening.
a
But
kid allergic to yogurt. I was like, what now? I mean, granted, dairy, we should
dairy,
limit,
maybe,
but
yeah.
still, I was like, that's a new one I haven't heard, but okay.
I definitely can relate to the fake it till you make it. Now, let's get one thing clear here, y'all. You don't fake your character and then not try to be it. The difference is that you create an experience of something you desire, whether it's a workshop retreat, whether it's journaling, whether it's the information you read. That is what you create, and then you fake like you are that person, and then your choices change. But you have to, the faking is your belief system. You're believing you've already made it so that your choices change. What you don't want to do is tell people you're doing something when you're not doing it. That creates a dissonance, which then impacts your mental health. Now you got anxiety. Now you got lack of confidence because you're a freaking liar. So you don't want to say, you know, I work out every day. I don't know what's happening. And you're not exercising. You don't want to say, I'm a vegan and you're over here cooking freaking chicken. You don't want to say like you got $1 million if you don't have it. Now, to one way to differentiate that is how are you presenting yourself to others versus what your vision board looks like, what your manifestation looks like. So be mindful about what you're presenting to others and what you're trying to believe in yourself. And I went through that with the screens, man. When I first started content, I would say stuff in the screens that I wanted to be doing, that I wanted to understand, and then it would force me because I had integrity, because I had a conscience. I wasn't a freaking thief, manipulator, liar to my creator. So I would have to then change what I was doing. And then that's where the CYC was born. But you talked about half of their life, the kids being with their parents. Would you say, because I'm with the gut repair solution company right now, they got the highest absorb products in the market, so tap in if y'all need that. Would you say that obesity is a metabolic dysfunction or is it environmental?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think that it is mostly environmental, and I think that's one of the things I've considered in terms of nutrition coaching. And one of the scopes I've thought about is like, I want to teach the parents in my community how to still honor their cultures because we have a lot of different ones in that community. But I want them to know how to honor their cultures through food because I know that that's a big experience I had. However, I want them to know how to make certain choices. Like instead of the seed oils, use avocado oil,
Mm-hmm.
use olive oil, because those small things and it's funny, I was just listening to your episode with Miss Fruity Cutie, and she's so fun. I was
She
like,
is
I
fun.
realized I was like, New York, I got it. I was like, that's what I like about
She
you, it's
is
that New
funny.
York energy. But even she was saying it like with the organic versus non-organic, like we do the best we can. And one of the things I think that keeps a lot of the students in the place they're in is again the choices that their parents are making, but also what are they seeing is like the cool conform. And, I've done food lessons with them where I bring out like the Tony the Tiger box and I'm like, okay, so you know what this is? This is all purposeful marketing towards you.
Mm-hmm.
This is a cute tiger. He's colorful. He looks cool. And you want to buy that product. And you then ask your parents, and your parents not knowing what they don't know,
Right.
as we've said, you don't know what you don't know. Just go, okay, my kid needs to eat. So yeah, we've normalized cereal for breakfast. And little by little, that's something I've pulled back in my own home. And I tell my son, I'm very intentional. Listen, you can have a small bowl of cereal. We're not doing that full big one. You're going to do a cup. You're going to portion it, first of all, but
20%.
understand that that has no nutritional value to you. So if you're going to have that, you need to have something else. You need to have your protein shake with it, or you need to have the fruits with it. You need to have something else that I know is giving you that nutritional value. And again, what I've witnessed is like the kids are making choices, based off the fact that a lot of kids are coming in with Takis. That's like having Jordans on nowadays. Like it's crazy to
For
fathom
real?
that.
Like, oh, he
I
got
swear to
Takis. He's
God.
cool.
I swear to God,
Stupid.
food has become a commodity. It like you would think these kids were in jail. Like, yo, you got the noodles, like
Yeah, them Takis is in there
like,
for
oh my
sure.
God, you got the ramen, like, these kids are like Taki fiends, and I'm like, oh no, like I've witnessed it little by little that the food is just it's a convenience. And again, the parents don't know better. So for me, it's like I want to start these programs where again these are things I can teach you. I can tell you where you can go in your neighborhood because within my school community, there are two different places and a lot of little local vendors that sell these fruits and vegetables. Where guess what? If you are on assistance by any means, you can use your benefits there. It doesn't mean you can just go to the corner store, which again is that old programming. So I think a lot of it is the environment. It's just like we've heard and many people have said obesity is not something that is in your DNA. You're programmed not by your DNA or your metabolic physical self, but you're programmed by here. And we know that, those of us that know everything starts in your mind. If we're not thinking about the food we're putting into our bodies as adults, why do we care about the ones we're giving our kids?
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier for me to go to Costco and get a big bag of the chips because it's just easy to throw in your lunch bag now versus having to give you some fruit that might go bad in a week. It's like, all right, you buy that bag of apples, you better eat it. Let's go
Yeah.
before it goes bad.
Right.
Those chips could sit there for however long. And again, it's also the community. Like I've realized living where I live, I started Googling the other day. I said, there's not one place I can go to eat a healthy meal.
Right.
Like
They do
yes, there
that
are places
on
where I
purpose.
can find options. Like there's a seafood boil place, great. That's fine. Like, again, there's places I can find and I can make it work, but there's not one dedicated restaurant within my neighborhood or my community where I teach in that is just health food, salad, anything.
That's how they do it, man. And that's a lot of that is minorities and the less fortunate. Now, that whole structure is completely propaganda. The way they promote on the media and news which gives the less fortunate minority, black people, brown people, people that aren't the superior white person that goes back to the Constitution and the creation of this land we talking about. Those people are put into a category, a stereotype. It started by devaluing neighborhoods, and black people were there. It started in Minneapolis. If there's black people there, that's where the suburbs were created. So now they think that since slavery, three-fifths of a man, like this is stuff that's in our ancestral belief system that has to be broken, but they dabble with
Yep.
this stuff on the media, how they promote crime. 90% freaking 10% white people in jails, and we got the most locked up people in the world. How is that?
Hmm.
And so that stigma of making weed illegal and arresting 4 times more black people than white people back in the day, and trying to make money because they ran out of taxes from
Hmm.
prohibition. All this stuff they're putting on us is then turned, well, I should say, onto the minority, because I'm not going to categorize myself as anything except for a believer in my creator. The categorization comes from humanity for control and fear-based and separation. And now what we have to understand is that exactly. And the more we complain, the more we take their bait as a lifestyle, the more we are conforming to that stigma, the more angry we get, the more we are angry black people. So how do we control our emotions and understand that the only person that's going to change this for me and my family is me? It's not out there. And so it starts by what you're consuming on the screens, the conversations, the people, the friends, and the bubble around your life. And so that understanding is what choosing yourself is. Now, if you got a feeling about something, figure out why you got that feeling and what's the solution. Don't start blaming, complaining, and then playing the victim to it and be like, oh, I just. But it is very tough to do, especially in those neighborhoods, the food deserts. They don't put healthy food there. They don't put, accessible resources. They put freaking pregnancy joints and STD joints and freaking, that's what they put there. That man,
Smoke
put a dang
shops
salad
and
joint.
yep.
Shoot.
Yeah.
So I
Even in
know.
our schools, they started to offer these healthier options, but it's not enough that it's not educating the students. It's not really changing their habits, because when they see it on the plate, they're kind of just looking at it like,
Yeah.
ew. And they push it to, they push it
Not
to the
cool.
side and they're like, I guess I'll be hungry until I go home.
Dang.
You know,
Yeah,
like,
and even that, the food in jail, okay, is the worst. I was in there, it sucked. The food in hospitals, my little brother was in there for 6 years. I went there so much, my mom gained so much weight. The food in schools, same stuff. All these things are structured in a square. There's no squares in nature. Y'all understand this? These are boxes and cages. Everything is in the building is shaped for compartmentalization, even in offices. So this is the structure we're trying to break free of. Like, you can play the game, but you have to have emotional awareness or you'll get trapped in it. You have to have the foundation. You have to have the pride in your story and in the struggle to allow yourself to be able to take a risk. You have to have that connection to your creator to understand that this whole creation is made for me to learn something. And it's not about good or bad, failure, success. It's about giving meaning to what it is, because it would be that if you wasn't here. People will replace you before your funeral if you want to get tied up in the titles and the race and the financial status and the certification. When you caught up in that, once that's gone, guess what? You're replaced. Now you get caught up in the impact, the character, your ability to persevere. How grateful can you stay? Gut health, sleep, exercise. These are things we can all do right now. And so, you came from literally crawling on the ground, and there's people who can still get out of bed, who aren't crawling on the ground, who cannot find a way to stop hitting the snooze, cannot find a way to stretch, to journal, to read. What do you do to help people in these situations who just play the victim and are so depressed and anxious and addicted to vices, to start to get them to change first?
I think one of the biggest things I want to start with is showing them the power of the systems that I do daily, the reading, the journaling, the mindset habits, the power in how I've been able to change my life with those things. Because again, as you've mentioned, I was doing that while teaching. I was doing that while raising kids. I was doing that while, learning and getting certifications. And I had all the excuses to tell myself I don't have the time. If I didn't have the time before, now you're adding all these extra things. You really don't have the time. But, it's just, I try not to force anyone, because naturally I want people to align to their highest self, right? That's my mission, is whether it's a child, whether it's an adult, no matter what age you are, I want you to align to your purpose. I want you to see the value in yourself. And I think as a teacher, I always felt like I naturally could see kids, and then I got an opportunity to nurture them. You know, we've talked before about nurture versus nature. And I believe that we all naturally have stuff within us. And we've talked about this on the CYC. It's like using your story, using that trigger point to say, like, how does this become your turning point? Because it
Hmm.
doesn't have to stop you. And it's never about pushing someone into this lifestyle, but it's gently encouraging them to see that little by little, you know, I really began, I think, making my mindset shifts with the reading because, it's funny, I jotted down the first few books that I read on this, movement of mine. And it was Carol Dweck Mindset. It was Atomic Habits by James Clear, Disciplined Destiny by Ryan, I want to say Holiday, and then Breaking the Habit of Being You by Joe Dispenza. And it was like just one book led to the next, and it led to that curiosity. So, I often will lead people to say, listen, if there's one thing I can tell you, and this actually just happened yesterday in a group of people I'm in, a group chat I'm in, one of the women expressed, I've been really down since last year. It's been one thing after the other. I've been really suffering. I can't take this anymore. And I said, listen, that's a choice. I was
Hmm.
like, I want to offer you one thing. Write down 3 things you're grateful for right now. I don't care what it is. It could be your sheets. It could be the lights. I don't care how little a thing you think it is. If you are grateful for it, that gratitude is going to change that momentum for you today. And in this moment where you're complaining and you're saying how hard things are, if that little glimmer gets you to do it tomorrow and then again, and this is someone who's reached out to me about, I've noticed your morning habits. I got to get into it. I got to do this journaling. I see you post it every day and I see, it makes me want to. And when I said that to her, she had just found out someone passed away. This is like the fifth or sixth person she's lost since last year. I said, just write down those 3 things. And literally within a moment, she messaged me back and said, you have no idea how much I needed that. And then 6 other people in this group chat who I don't know personally started going, wow, you know what? I'm going to do that today. You know what? That's a great
Hmm.
idea, Ashley. Thank you for that. And it's these little moments where I get to kind of inspire and encourage and create that momentum. And I get to show people this small thing can shift that day for you. And once you decide to make that one choice, it then becomes, okay, what's the next choice? And what's the next one? And when you're ready, I'm here to support you as your coach. I'm here to help you as that personal development coach or the nutrition coach or the energy leadership coach to get you into a system or a habit where you start to create that shift daily for yourself and
Hmm.
where you're choosing yourself, not just because I'm leading you there and just because I'm showing you what's possible, but because you start to see
Yeah.
how it's changing and how it helps, you know?
And that's a huge benefit of posting your routines and your commitments, because once you have people inspired and expecting you to be awake, now you use the ego to your advantage, because now you have to get up because people are relying on you. When you are relying on you, all the excuses, all the victimhood, oh my God, do it tomorrow. But when you got somebody like, well, your morning videos inspire me. There's times when I first started, now I can barely get to my alarm because I have so much stuff I'm creating and my life is going in a positive trajectory.
You're
So
just
I'm like
up.
so excited. But there's been
Yeah.
times since I moved to New York when I first started waking up at 4 and 3. And I'm like, man, I don't need to get up today. What? I don't work until freaking 4 p.m. But when I knew people were inspired, it became more about my contribution and I put my feelings to the side. And so that's why the community is so powerful, because when you start to get the support from others, you don't want to let them down by then just giving up. When you start to inspire others from your posts or from, even just commenting or even just messaging someone and someone messaging you back, like that stuff actually shifts your internal dialogue and your belief in yourself. And so finding those communities, those chats, those challenges, those networking events, those conventions, those concerts, even live perform music, those shift your whole energy. You always are like, wow, that felt great. You go to Broadway shows, you go anywhere, even the strip club maybe. I don't know some people, but that's a performance too. I mean, when I go in there, I'm always like, wow, she's
Yeah.
talented and strong as hell. How is she holding herself like that? Because I'm never like a
You're like, what's her
sexual
workout
guy, but I'm
routine?
like, damn, how you? Oh, I can't even do that, and I got big ass shoulders. But that's that that's that repetition. But
Different.
getting
That
around those
flexibility.
those those live experiences are important. And everybody who came on this podcast, even I think I'm up to like 80 episodes total around there,
So
and
cool.
every single person between both podcasts, every single person said books. Yo, information. You have to learn differently. You train differently when you know what's possible. That's why we share testimonials on here. The first thing I was in jail. I read The Secret, and it was a law of attraction, and it shifted my mindset. And then eventually, I was like, okay, it's kind of some bullshit. And then I read another book, and I was like, oh,
Then you're
you
like,
you
maybe
are
not.
you literally project, you reflect what you project. I'm like, oh, that's also law of attraction. Then it's like, oh, your environment becomes is from your internal belief system. Like, oh, that's also law of, oh, and then you read about manifesting, then you read about becoming supernatural, then you read about Jesus and Muhammad. I'm like, dang, this is for real. You really
Yeah.
do only notice what you believe. It's a self-confirming bias. Is that what it is? I forget what it's, self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yep. Where you,
So,
you only notice the things that you believe. So those books are important, man, for sure.
well, yeah, my collections now, I want to say I'm probably at least 60 books in from those first five. I'm like running out of room. I've got some of them stashed in the drawer. And then I just ordered Joe Dispenza Placebo, thanks to you. Yep, see, I was like, I'm adding that one. And
Yeah. The
it's
first
good.
story, man, they talked about
See.
one dude was like, and this goes back to your belief system. One dude was like, the doctor was like, what do you want from me? He was like, I just want to make it to Christmas. And so he had like cancer in his esophagus, cancer in his liver, did the testing, and the doctor was like, okay, I gave him these pills of medication, and he went till Christmas, New Year's Day, he was back in the hospital the day after he died because his belief was
Yeah,
that I only had till Christmas. Come to find out, the test was wrong. He didn't even have cancer. He just died from his thoughts. He died from his
that's
thoughts. He
ins
didn't even have cancer. He was normal.
I
No, there was
believe
no
that.
cirrhosis on his liver. He had nothing in his throat. The test was wrong. And so he literally just had that belief, oh, all I got is Christmas. And I'm sure he lived that last quarter of his life better than any other quarter ever. Dream like you're going to live forever, but live like you're going to die tomorrow.
100%. Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast with Ed Milet, and I forgot who the doctor's name was, but the doctor was talking literally about that and the power of shifting our mindset and then tapping into that vagus nerve and all those connections there. The chronic inflammation I used to have, that was a large part due to the stress I was under and
Mm-hmm.
the going and going and going and not resting. I would sleep like 4 or 5 hours, if that. And now I'm like 6 to 8. Don't talk to me if not. And now I'm like in a sweet
Right.
spot of 7 hours. And I'm like, those little things, it makes a big difference. And we don't realize that it is part belief. When my father had cancer, my mom's first thought was fly organic food in from California, because in her mind, her holistic mind was he needs the best source of food. He needs the best energy in that food. He needs the organic food. And that wasn't something in 1995 that
Mm-hmm.
was, a big deal. But my mom knew if he has any shot, and he was already a stage 3, cancer patient, it was pretty far gone. He was given 3 weeks to live. He ended up living a little over 3 months. But even she knew, like, this is going to be the things you need. And he always kept a good, positive attitude. And, even in the hospital, even as he lost a dramatic amount of weight, even as he lost his thick silver head of hair that was like a huge staple for him, he was losing parts of his identity. But I could see, even as a 10-year-old girl, I could witness his energy. His energy field was as strong as ever. And his belief was, if I'm going to get better, I'm going to get better. And if I'm not meant to, I'm not meant to. But his want and his mindset never really changed even through all that, And so I've witnessed it firsthand.
So how with kids and parents, what is your approach to changing the belief system that is literally rooted in habits, subconscious programming, and surface level focus of just focusing on thoughts? How do you get down to the meaning of life and finding willpower and faith and all these things you need to overcome the things you're so used to?
Well, so I think in terms of the youth, I do a lot of that kind of stuff inside of my classroom. For example, my students and I were just watching a TED Talk of a 10-year-old kid, and it was all around the mindset of a champion. And he starts with this narrative about Michael Jordan and how, he's one of the most successful players, but that didn't come without failures. And, in giving them these journals, in having them write these positive affirmations, in teaching them that in my classroom, your mindset is going to depend on how far you go. You walk in a clean slate. I always tell them no matter what it is that's gone on before, you walk in a brand new person in here, you're going to walk out a completely different person. And so I little by little start to instill those things in them directly. And then I think a large part of my reach in terms of the community and the leaders and the parents, it's also then really connecting to the parents that I'm working with every year. And I have many parents who are no longer students of mine. These kids are now sixth, seventh, eighth. Some of them are in high school. I'm still got good, strong relationships with them. I think that it comes down to not just, again, I'm not forcing my mission on them, but in showing these young people in my classroom every year and in connecting and showing their parents who I am genuinely as a human and how I care about their children in my classroom, how I stay in communication with them, even, the things I discuss with them, it then leads them to trusting me. And so when I recommend something like, hey, I'm noticing your child's struggling with this, maybe certain things that you can do, for example, are working on his nutrition or her nutrition and seeing, with a parent, well, if this and this is going on, how often are they going to sleep late? I have these conversations with them. Now, do I have them in September right off the bat? Absolutely not. Again, I build that trust with them. I build that relationship. I show them who I am so that when I approach them to have those conversations, and then I try to, again, encourage that knowledge of, hey, your kid should get 8 to 10 hours of sleep. So if they're going to sleep at midnight and waking up at 6 because that's what time you need them up in the morning, they're not functioning well in my classroom and they're not going to continue to function well in life. And, listen, on top of the not sleeping, are they on devices all day? Because, yes, I have my own children. It's a balance, and I offer that education. My personal motto is I want to empower, educate, and engage whoever I speak to. And again, in building these relationships, in forming this community of parents and children, we all become this, listen, it takes a village to raise your kid, and I'm part of that village. And now that you trust me, you'll make these changes. And I have had parents who have told me, you have no idea how much I needed to know that. I had no idea that that was accessible to me. I had no idea that that's why my kid might be acting out. There's so many kids going through the system that are being diagnosed with a variety of things that I know and and we know that if they ate different, if
Mm-hmm.
they played more, if they
Right.
got more physical activity, and there's days where it's so cold outside here in New York, my students aren't going out for recess and they're not getting that movement. And recently, the teachers who do it are like, all right, let's not just sit and watch a movie with them. Let's have them do musical chairs. Let's get them to move a little bit. And then I'm cognizant of that. So when they come in my classroom, it's like, let's do a brain break with like a Simon Says and a movement or something. I've had them meditate. I'll play high frequency vibes, in the classroom to again focus on the environment. What are they consuming? What are they seeing? Are they seeing, fast paced, going all day? Are they seeing us with systems in the classroom even? Are they seeing that they're learning these boundaries? And again, it just really is forming those relationships, building that trust with them, and getting them to see that I don't mean any harm. I'm not here to judge them. I'm not here to tell them they're bad parents. But again, I'm here to empower you. I'm here to engage with you, and I'm here to educate you in stuff you don't know,
Yeah.
or you've been misled, you know?
No, yeah, or that it misled by your caregiver's example and how they feel. And we've said it before, they're not doing what you say. They might do what you say in your face, but when you leave, they're doing what you do. So don't think they ain't
Hmm.
watching. They're watching everything. And they're watching how you respond to stress, traffic, the news. They're watching what type of food you eat, how you eat it, how often you eat, what type of vices. What's always in mommy's cup at 10 p.m. is red in the wine glass. They see that. You need something to
Oh,
go to
we've had
sleep.
kids tell us, we're like, oh, okay. Like you see some of their responses, you're like, oh, mommy, like, oh, okay, got it. And sometimes you're like, oh, that makes sense. But yeah, no, they see it.
I'm always getting to this point where we're at a literally an abundance and an all-time high overload of population on this planet. And so if we want to save humanity, we have to show the kids how to choose themselves balance, systems, and awareness, emotional regulation, nervous system regulation, gut health, all the things, because I'm a firm believer in the balance of the universe. And there wouldn't be a God without the devil. Who is he going to save? There wouldn't be someone to lead without followers and people who need help. So I'm grateful
We
for
need
both.
that contrast.
We need the contrast. It's the balance of the universe. And so I'm a believer that some people are sent here to show us what not to do, but that doesn't mean they have to be that person forever. But my thing is, if you're authentic enough and you truly believe you're a criminal, you will do that for the rest of your life. If you truly
Hmm.
believe that you are a victim, or I'm just a black person, or I'm poor, or my family always does this, we're all fat, we all got diabetes, or my mom was abusive, so I'm abusive. That's just how it is. If you believe that, ain't nothing gonna change. You have to be the cycle breaker. And even if you're 20, 30, 40, 50 listening to this, you still might be part of the cycle. And this is a never ending journey, y'all. This is a never ending evolution all the way until your last day. And the moment you think you made it is the moment you stop living. And I believe that I'm going to be 124 because the record is 123. And I'm going to believe that for as long as I live, because I'm going to live
When my
longer with that
students
belief.
ask me,
Yep.
yep, they go, "Why you fast so much?" I'm like, "Because I'm trying to be at least 100 years old, and I'm not trying to be like a decrepit 100 years old, guys. Like
Right.
I want to be out here." And
Out
then
here.
they die laughing. I'm like, "I'm trying to be in these streets at 100 years old, because that's what resonates with them." And they're like, "Miss, you are so whacked out." And I'm like, "I know, guys, but this is why you love me, because it's that mindset of I'm always gonna learn." It took me till 35 to start realizing like I had to look within, but that didn't stop me. The
Hmm.
belief isn't that I'm late. The belief is that I'm always on time. I'm always in the right place at the right time. And that always comes with everlasting expansion. And, I had a student recently this year tell me, "Miss, a lot of adults have limits, but I don't think you have any." And that was probably the greatest compliment I could have ever gotten. He said, because, and I said, I looked at him and I was like, "You know what?" I was like, "I really appreciate that, because I do genuinely believe I'm limitless." And in you as a 9-year-old kid, you're witnessing that anytime you come to me, I'm not stressed. I'm not bugging out on you. I'm not like, "Oh my God, what do you need?" I'm looking at you going, "All right, let's figure this out. Either I'm going to have an answer for you or we're going to get an answer. And one way or the other, we're going to find out what you're coming to me for." And
Hmm.
him witnessing that since September and him telling me, like, "You just don't seem to ever have a limit," was like, huh, all right,
Cool.
you're doing the right thing here, Ashley, because they see it. And it's that mindset, and it's getting students in my classroom to understand at 9 years old, and even when I taught middle school, that there is progress and there is way more than just what you're seeing in this little 10 block radius you live within. There's so much outside. There's so many opportunities you could have if you're open to them. But that doesn't just come just because. It
Yeah.
comes because, again, you're open to that
And you got
expansion.
to
And
do
that
the work.
mindset has to be. Yeah,
You got to
that
do the work.
mindset is part of it, and the legacy that comes from that feeling of limitless. I've actually jotted that down, that that's one of my youth programming like titles, Limitless Legacy. I want these children to understand, and I have worked with majority minority students in my whole career. And these are the students that, like you said earlier, are up against so many other things in life already, that if I can teach these young people at 9 years old, you have a limitless legacy on your shoulders. It's just a matter of building on it every year you expand and get older, and in you staying open to this process and you having the growth mindset, whether you believe in it fully or not, whether one kid walks out of my classroom feeling that limitless feeling, that is my measure of success. That's how I know I've had the impact I've wanted to have.
That's how you know. You got to, it starts with the people around you. But first, you have to believe in yourself. Otherwise, nobody's going to believe you. So, you see why she leads the CYC Kids. You see it, y'all. So y'all better tap in, man. We got every month, well, one Monday a month. We're working on
Yep.
in-person programs for the youth. So if you're tapping in and you have any interest, if you have connections or anything going on, please either hit me up or Ashley at Energy Ashley, or you can tap into the CYC Choose Yourself community on the school app. What do we have to look forward to coming up these next 3 weeks, but also this year for the CYC Kids? What you got cooking?
Definitely, like you said, I want to program out some things for in-school visits. I want us to be able to create some opportunities where we see more kids engaging with our programming. But continuing these next few months is really going to stay with, building the leaders. Again, we can't impact our youth unless the leadership changes, unless the parents, the caregivers, and the people leading them, their teachers, otherwise, whatever it is, they need to continue to make those changes to be better and influence those youth. So the next few months is really going to focus on that purposefulness, that intention, even like we've talked about, the need for play and balance. Because, as adults, that's still really important. And in us conforming so much to what is normal, I think a lot of adults lack the idea that play is actually something that should be very normal as an adult. You should smile, you should have, happiness, creating that 20% balance.
I'll be
So
glad.
continuing to focus the adults, in our workshops for the next few months around those kinds of ideas, and continuing to build the shift in how they're seeing themselves and how they are leading the youth. And then eventually, like I said, CYC Kids for me is a huge push into what I've wanted to do with the youth development programs, where mindset programming in schools, getting a chance for you and I to go into schools and do talks where we are telling these young people that, again, you have the opportunity to be limitless. It's just a matter of knowing how to get there. It's a matter of setting that foundation and, us helping them, and even thinking about young athletes and wanting to create that programming around, again, the idea that you're not just talented in one area. You got to have the right mindset. You got to be coachable, and expansion is yours. And the earlier you learn that in life, the better you're going to be. And, I've always said for my own children, I've always led in the belief that I want them to have a foundation they can build on. I had to tear mine down. Parts of it were definitely very purposeful to me, but I had to tear mine down as an adult and
Hmm.
then learn and make those choices. And it's so much harder to make the choices as an adult because, again, it's so easy to get stuck. So, really want to just continue to, again, the adults first and foremost, but then that little by little, I really want to see the CYC Kids programming in schools, teaching them, they have other opportunities, because it is a balance. And while the educators are doing what they can to lead them academically, I want to be able to push into schools and lead them socially, lead them emotionally, teach them these skills that are so necessary. And again, the earlier they get it, the more they can take it with them and the more they can build on it and just become better, expansive people, because they are going to be our future leaders. And we need
Dang
them to
right.
be way better.
And we need them to be better than any generation before, because we are in a worse situation than ever before. And so if you're listening to this and you have kids or you're taking care of your parents, you can tap in with us once a month. We have a Zoom led by Miss Energy Ashley. I'll be attending as well. We also have weekly meetings, CYC, Tuesday, every 10 a.m. EST to GYM, and that's Grow Your Mind with Inner Size, because your immunity and our unity depends on community. So if you're looking to meet us in person, we do workshops all week with the CYC workshops. We got the CYC retreats. So just tap into the resources, man. Especially as a parent, you got to start making the changes first. I guarantee you come to a workshop, go through the choose yourself process, start building your brand, and start filling up your cup and pour from an overflow, and your kid's going to grow, and that's for sure. So y'all tap in. You got something you want to lead the people with, Miss Energy Ashley?
Oh, there's purpose and passion. And I want to leave you with this quote my dad used to tell me: think, don't think.
Hmm.
So trust yourself when you have the thought, know that it's purposeful, it's timely, you are where you're supposed to be, and just trust in yourself. Like I said, he used to tell me that all the time, and I would always go, huh? So think, don't think. Trust yourselves, believe in this journey, and find your purpose, find your passion, and join us in the CYC, because the community, the power, the love, it is the only way we get further in life.
Y'all
So
heard it. Y'all heard it. Thank you, Miss EA. Think, don't think. Click the link and cleanse your gut so your breath don't stink. Y'all tap in. Y'all make sure you tap in before you tap out, because we ain't got much time until we ain't got no more time. In the meantime, in between time, big dream time, routine time, gut clean time, keep the gratitude in your attitude, and always choose yourself.
awesome. Thank you.